Hi. So this is a video for white people who are continuing to seek to be allies to Black people and people of colour in this time. And I want to speak about how you, as a white person, respond to conversations about race where Black people are angry and where you feel like you are the recipient of that anger. And this video's come about because in the last few days I've had quite a lot of messages from white friends and followers to say, I really want to be part of the solution. I want to do my anti-racism work. I want to listen, but I find it really hard to be in the conversation if Black people are angry at me personally, or if I'm being shamed or silenced or kind of pushed out the conversation. And often what they're saying here is, if we want to get to a place where we're closing the divide between us as races, then surely we should be holding these conversations in collaborative, loving ways. And if Black people are angry at me, isn't that perpetuating the same kind of system? And I want to offer a perspective that I hope will help you show up as a better ally in these conversations. Two perspectives, actually. So the first would be, so what you'll often hear when white people say this is, do you know what? Black people are angry. So, and rightly so. So you just need to take it, you just need to be in those conversations. And if a Black person just wants to shout at you and be angry at you and shame you, then you just need to take it because Black people are suffering. And we have been suffering because of a system that you are compliant in. And I think there's some truth in that perspective. There's some redistributing of justice that comes from white people feeling bad for a period of time, and some personal healing for Black people that comes from being able to make white people feel bad for all of the things that have happened to us and continue to happen to us. I used to have this dream that one day farm animals would suddenly be able to talk, and they'd just come to us and they'd be like, fuck you, like seriously, fuck you. You've kept me in a cage, you've killed my mother and my father and my cousins and denied me the right to like roam freely, like fuck you, humans. And if that happened, we as humans would kind of have to be like, ooh, yeah, fair enough. And I'm not being flippant by using this comparison of farm animals, because really the closest framing that we have to understand how Black people have been treated in history is as farm animals, like worse than farm animals. My great-great-great-grandmother, Happy, was a slave and taken from her home in Nigeria, we think, to Guyana in the Caribbean, and kept in captivity, routinely beaten and raped, probably separated from her family. So understanding the level of injustice that there has been, I think gives some understanding for the level of anger that there is now. But there's also something more. And I think it's beyond justice, and it's about healing. So this collective outpouring of anger from Black people that there seems to be at the moment, that there's space for now, so is emerging. I often think about how when you break up of a relationship, and first of all you're just really sad, and then at some point you start getting angry at the person, and all of your friends will say like, oh, it's good, you're angry, you're angry, this is a stage in the process, this is good. And I really think understanding what's happening now for Black people in that way is really helpful, that this expression of anger is a stage in the grieving process that has to happen. If we try and go from suddenly Black people can talk about their anger and their grief for what's happened, for what's still happening, to okay, well, let's have these conversations in really collaborative, healthy ways. Like, no, that can't happen. There has to be a stage in the grieving process that is rage. And that if we bypass that, then we don't honour what has happened or what is happening. And so we don't actually truly heal. So as a white person, when you show up in these conversations in a way that is open and allowing and accepting that for a period of time you may need to be the recipient of this anger so that this grief can move through you, then you're actually an active participant in this great healing. You're not just a passive person receiving the anger because it's fair. You're engaging in this reconciliation process in the way that you can. So to understand that this receiving of anger makes you an actor in the personal healing for the Black person who's expressing it, and in our collective healing, because it allows us to move through the grieving process in a way, in a chronological way, not trying to skip that part. And then the other part, which I've been thinking about a lot, and I think it's really important, is this idea of burden. So when it comes to racism, and I'm talking specifically about Black people, of course, all ethnic minorities experience racism, but in this case, when it comes to racism, Black people carry the entire burden for racism. Like, white people carry no burden. And so when you show up in a conversation in a way that takes on some of the pain by being the recipient of anger or shaming, you in some way inviting some of the burden onto yourself. And when we think about the burden that Black people experience because of racism, I mean, it's everything from the most extreme, like in the States, that when you leave the house, you know that you may not come back because you could be murdered by the people who are supposed to protect you, to the everyday burdens, like in the UK, of just having to change how you speak or how you dress or how you do your hair so that you can fit in with the white norm. These burdens are everywhere for Black people. And so as a white person, when you are in a conversation where you feel you're receiving anger and that hurts and that feels uncomfortable, you're taking on some burden, you're taking on some personal risk. And in doing that, bringing some small level of equality and of balance. And so I think it's really, really important for us to shift this idea, or for you as an ally, to shift from thinking, okay, well, first of all, definitely to shift from thinking that Black people shouldn't show up in a way that's angry because it doesn't serve our healing. Like, definitely just move that thought out straight away. But also to shift from a place of thinking that if you as a white person are receiving anger or shaming or blaming for racism, that it's not just that you're just taking it because, well, slavery. It's that you're actively participating in this process of healing by showing up in a way that allows the grieving process to happen for Black people, by showing up in a way that says, hey, I'm willing to take on some of the burden. I'm willing to take on some of your burden and to stand by you and with you. That you're really putting something on the line for us. And that's ultimately what allyship is about. You can post on social media and read books, and that's a start. But if you really want to be an ally, you have to put something on the line. There has to be some personal risk to you. And this is one of the ways that you can do that. By allowing Black rage to be there, by not trying to rationalize it or move through it, but to really honor it as something that needs to happen. So I hope that's a helpful perspective to stay with, because black anger's coming. That is unquestionable. And the question is, do you want to be an ally in its healing? Thank you.